Greetings and peace. I would like to start this with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be with you and yours. Today's presentation, I would like to talk about the Islamic origins of what they call the secret chiefs in Western occultism and esotericism. Now, there's always this information out there in the Western occult and esoteric system about secret chiefs who are guiding humanity's destiny. And that comes from the Islamic concept of Rijal Al-Ghayb, the men of the unknown, or the hidden saints, right? But of course, the Western system is not going to give Islam any credit. So that's where I come in, like you've seen with all of my videos and presentations. So without further ado, I represent myself only, and I hope you benefit from this. Disclaimer and scope. This presentation is provided for educational, free speech, comparative religion, and entertainment purposes only. It explores historical, theological, and esoteric claims surrounding the Islamic concept of Rijal Al-Ghayb and its possible parallels within Western occult traditions. The material does not claim absolute historical certainty, nor does it seek to attack any religion or spiritual path. Instead, it examines how ideas about hidden saints, spiritual hierarchies, initiatic secrecy, and unseen guardians may have moved across civilizations through translations, trade, conquest, mysticism, and intellectual exchange. The presentation approaches the topic through Islamic theology, Sufi metaphysics, medieval transmission of knowledge, and comparative esotericism. References to Western occultism are analytical rather than devotional. Viewers are encouraged to independently verify sources, consult academic scholarship, and distinguish between documented history, mystical interpretation, and speculative synthesis. The goal is to basically have intellectual exploration and deeper reflection on how civilizations borrow spiritual symbols, while often erasing their original context, which has been the goal of my videos, books, lectures, and presentations. And I also have written a book on the Rijal Al-Ghayb, which I will put the link in the description below. And those that have followed my work, you have seen, whether it's Aleister Crowley, OTO, Thelema, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, there is a bridge between the East and the West that is often unexplored. And I have bridged those connections and gaps, right, while also respecting our brothers and sisters here in the West. So my main goal is to make sure that everyone is given their due credit and rights. The introduction and looking at the hidden architecture of esotericism. Many Western occult systems speak of invisible adepts, ascended masters, hidden initiates, or secret chiefs guiding humanity from behind the veil of ordinary perception. These figures appear in Rosicrucianism, Theosophy, Hermeticism, Golden Dawn literature, and modern occult fraternities. Yet long before these European systems formalized such doctrines, Islamic mystical literature had already developed a sophisticated cosmology surrounding the Rijal Al-Ghayb, the hidden saints of Allah operating within the unseen order of creation. Now, within the Sufi metaphysics, these hidden saints were not merely symbolic archetypes, but functional spiritual realities entrusted with maintaining balance, transmitting divine mercy, and guarding sacred knowledge. The presentation argues that several Western occult ideas surrounding hidden masters mirrors Islamic mystical structures with striking similarity. Through translation movements in Spain, Sicily, the Ottoman world, the Crusader contact zones, and interactions between European esotericists and Islamic civilizations, fragments of these concepts appear to have migrated into Western esotericism, while often losing their explicitly Islamic identity. Look at Al-Ghayb, the Quranic foundation of the unseen. The Islamic concept of Al-Ghayb begins with the Quran itself, where belief in the unseen is described as one of the defining characteristics of true faith. The unseen includes angels, divine decree, paradise, spiritual realities, and hidden dimensions beyond ordinary sensory perception. Unlike materialist frameworks that privilege only visible reality, right? Islam places profound emphasis on metaphysical existence and divine concealment as part of sacred wisdom. Now, the Western occult fascination with hidden worlds, astral planes, invisible orders, and secret adepts resembles the Islamic metaphysical framework in structural form. Now, while Western esoteric traditions later framed these ideas through Hermetic, Kabbalistic, or occult vocabulary, the Islamic doctrine of Al-Ghayb already articulated a multi-layered cosmos inhabited by spiritual agencies, governed by divine order. The difference is that Islam anchors the unseen strictly within Tawheed, right? Belief in God and submission to Allah, whereas later occult systems frequently detached hidden knowledge from prophetic revelation. The Rijal Al-Ghayb in Sufi cosmology. Now, in Sufi cosmology, the Rijal Al-Ghayb are hidden saints who act invisibly within creation while remaining concealed from public recognition. Their task is not worldly domination, but spiritual stewardship under divine command. They are described as anonymous servants whose sincerity and annihilation of ego allows them to become instruments of mercy. This doctrine appears extensively in works associated with Ibn Arabi, Al-Jili, Al-Tirmidhi, and later Sufi metaphysics. The resemblance between the Rijal Al-Ghayb and the secret chiefs of Western occultism is profound. Both concepts involve hidden initiates who preserve sacred wisdom, guide humanity indirectly, and operate beyond public institutions. However, in Islamic thought, these hidden saints remain servants of Allah without independent authority. Western occultism often transformed similar figures into autonomous masters, possessing secret power, detached from prophetic revelation and integrated instead into magical or initiatic systems. The Kutub and the occult idea of the hidden master. The Kutub in Sufi doctrine represents the spiritual pole of the age, the hidden access through which whom divine mercy flows into the world. The Kutub is rarely publicly known and often lives in anonymity despite immense spiritual rank. The concept presents a cosmic hierarchy centered upon a concealed spiritual authority whose existence sustains metaphysical equilibrium. Western occult organizations later developed strikingly parallel ideas. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, Theosophy, and later Rosicrucian groups spoke of secret chiefs or hidden masters overseeing initiatic currents. These occult authorities were imagined as unseen supervisors, transmitting wisdom to selected initiates. The structural similarity to the Kutub concept raises important questions about intellectual transmission from Islamic metaphysics into European esoteric frameworks. Abdal and the doctrine of spiritual substitutes. Islamic tradition speaks of the Abdal, hidden saints whose number remains constant because when one dies, another replaces him. Their unseen prayers are believed to protect humanity and divert catastrophe. The doctrine emphasizes continuity of divine mercy through spiritually realized individuals who remain hidden from ordinary society. This resembles later occult claims about hidden adepts preserving esoteric wisdom across generations. Rosicrucian legends about secret brotherhoods and immortal custodians parallel the Islamic belief that certain saintly stations persist continuously through divine appointment. Yet Islamic theology frames the Abdal as servants of God, rather than independent wielders of occult power, preserving humility rather than spiritual elitism. The Sufi master Ibn Arabi and the metaphysics of hidden hierarchies. Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi developed one of the most sophisticated metaphysical systems in Islamic intellectual history. His writings mapped spiritual hierarchies, invisible saints, cosmic poles, and unseen divine governance. He described creation as layered reality, where spiritual ranks maintain metaphysical harmony under Allah's command. European esoteric scholars later encountered translated Arabic text during periods of intense intercultural exchange. Even when Ibn Arabi himself was not directly translated, the intellectual atmosphere shaped by Islamic metaphysics influenced medieval occult philosophy through Spain and Sicily. The Western fascination with cosmic correspondences, hidden initiates, and symbolic hierarchies bears notable resonance with concepts deeply elaborated in Sufi metaphysics centuries earlier. Al-Andalus and the transmission of esoteric knowledge. Islamic Spain became one of the greatest centers of translation and intellectual synthesis in medieval history. Muslim, Jewish, and Christian scholars interacted within an environment where philosophy, astronomy, alchemy, mysticism, mathematics, and metaphysics circulated across cultural boundaries. Arabic text entered Latin Europe through translation schools in Toledo and elsewhere. Within this environment, esoteric concepts did not remain isolated. Islamic cosmology, numerology, alchemy, and metaphysical symbolism influenced emerging European occult traditions. The transmission was often indirect, with ideas absorbed into Latin, Christian, or Hermetic frameworks without explicit acknowledgement of their Islamic roots. This process contributed to the later development of Renaissance esotericism and occult philosophy. So the Islamic Moorish presence in Spain brought Europe out of the darkness into the light at the time where they were being persecuted by the church for pursuing knowledge. The Crusades and contact with Islamic mysticism. The Crusades were not merely military conflicts, but also zones of cultural encounter. European knights, monks, and travelers encountered advanced Islamic civilizations possessing sophisticated philosophical and mystical traditions. Contact with Sufi orders, Islamic sacred architecture, and metaphysical teachings likely contributed to the reshaping of European spiritual imagination. Legends surrounding the Knights Templars frequently include claims of exposure to Eastern wisdom traditions during their presence in the Levant. While many later claims are speculative, it remains historically plausible that concepts concerning hidden initiates, sacred geometry, esoteric symbolism, and spiritual hierarchies entered European consciousness through prolonged contact with Islamic civilization. Sufi orders and secret initiatic chains. Sufi tariqas preserved chains of initiation linking disciple to master and ultimately to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Spiritual authority flowed through transmission, discipline, remembrance, and purification rather than public institutional power. Many orders emphasized secrecy regarding advanced spiritual practices and inner teachings. Western occult fraternities later adopted comparable initiatic structures. Degrees, hidden instruction, symbolic progression, and inner circles became defining features of Rosicrucian, Masonic, and occult organizations. Although initiatic systems exist in many cultures, the sophistication and historical continuity of Islamic mystical chains likely influenced European esoteric models during periods of intellectual exchange. Al-Qidr and the archetype of the hidden guide. In Islamic tradition, Al-Qidr represents the mysterious servant of Allah, possessing divinely granted knowledge beyond ordinary comprehension. The Quranic narrative of Musa, Moses, and Qidr presents a teacher whose actions appear paradoxical, yet ultimately reveal hidden wisdom. Qidr becomes a powerful symbol of concealed spiritual guidance in Sufi literature. The Western occult archetype of the hidden initiate or secret teacher strongly parallels the Qidr motif, right? And secret chiefs in occult systems often function as hidden mentors revealing deeper realities to prepared initiates. The Islamic version, however, remains subordinate entirely to divine will, whereas later occult reinterpretations sometimes transformed the hidden guide into an autonomous occult authority. So at the end of the day, everything is under control of Allah, the God. Secrecy, silence, and esoteric authority. Islamic mystical teachings repeatedly emphasize concealment, humility, and silence. The greatest saints often remain unknown, avoiding fame to preserve sincerity before Allah. Their power lies in anonymity rather than public recognition, and the hiddenness itself becomes a spiritual discipline protecting the soul from ego and corruption. Western occultism absorbed the allure of secrecy but frequently reoriented it towards exclusivity and initiatic elitism. Secret societies cultivated mystery as institutional identity, while Islamic spirituality framed concealment primarily as ethical purification. This distinction is crucial because it demonstrates how similar structural ideas can evolve towards very different spiritual objectives. So, the Islamic esoteric path or the secret path, right? It's about concealment, it's about being ethical and being pure and devoted to God and perfecting your character. While the ones in the West, no matter what society or fraternity or order you look at, it's all about the rank and the elitism and the cliques and the ego. So, yep, they kind of lost the plot with that. The occult reinterpretation of Islamic esotericism. As Islamic concepts entered European intellectual circles, they were often stripped from their Quranic and prophetic foundations. Ideas concerning hidden hierarchies, spiritual intermediaries, sacred symbolism, and metaphysical correspondences were adapted into Hermetic, Kabbalistic, alchemical, and magical frameworks. This reinterpretation transformed doctrines rooted in submission to Allah into systems focused on occult attainment, initiatic power, or esoteric mastery. In this sense, Western occultism did not merely borrow isolated symbols, but frequently reconfigured entire metaphysical structures inherited through contact with Islamic civilization. Rosicrucianism and the Hidden Brotherhood. Rosicrucian manifestos described a secret brotherhood possessing hidden wisdom and guiding civilization from the shadows. Members were portrayed as concealed adepts working silently for spiritual transformation. The parallels to the Rijal Al-Ghayb are striking: invisibility, hidden service, sacred knowledge, and metaphysical guardianship. While Rosicrucianism drew from multiple sources, including Christian mysticism, alchemy, and Hermeticism, the broader atmosphere of hidden saintly hierarchies resembled Sufi cosmology. Islamic intellectual currents flowing into Europe through centuries of translation and contact may have contributed indirectly to these later occult narratives. And if you read Fama Fraternitatis and all of the stuff with Christian Rosenkreutz, he was initiated by the Ikhwan al-Safa. So he went to the East, got the knowledge, and brought it back to the West in North Africa and the Middle East during his time. And the symbol of the rose, it's used by the Qadariya Sufi order originally, the rose symbolizing the mystical union with Allah, God. And the title, the Rose of Baghdad, was given to Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani. So we see that similar theme, with the Freemasonry, Knights Templar, right? They were in the Middle East gaining knowledge from the Sufis and the Hashashin. Then you have Rosicrucianism, it's the same thing. Crowley during his time in North Africa and Egypt. So we see that bridge, right, of all these different fraternities and groups towards the East, but the East is not giving any acknowledgement or credit. Even Golden Dawn, right, with the geomancy that originally comes from Islam. So, yep, we need to give credit where it's due. Freemasonry and sacred architecture. Islamic civilization developed highly advanced traditions of sacred geometry, architecture, symbolic proportion, and spiritual aesthetics. Mosques, madrasas, and Sufi lodges embodied metaphysical principles through design and symbolism. Craftsmen frequently operated within guilds, preserving spiritual dimensions of labor and construction. Freemasonry later developed symbolic systems around builders, sacred geometry, hidden wisdom, and initiatic brotherhood. Although direct linear derivation cannot always be proven, The possibility of influence through Mediterranean contact and crusader interactions remains an important area of comparative study. The movement of symbolic systems across civilizations rarely leaves perfect documentation. And of course, you have the Mediterranean pass, right? And the signs, grips, tokens, and passwords that the Knights of Templar and the Knights of Malta were given in order to pass freely. This system already existed in the Islamic world, which then was carried over to the Christian world in Europe. So that initiatic system existed way before 1717. Theosophy and the Ascended Masters. 19th century theosophy popularized the idea of ascended masters, hidden in remote regions guiding humanity's spiritual evolution. These hidden adepts resembled a universalized version of concealed saintly hierarchies. Theosophical literature frequently drew from Asian and Middle Eastern religious concepts, while reinterpreting them through occult universalism. The resemblance to the Islamic doctrine of hidden saints is substantial, yet theosophy detached these figures from the framework of revelation and prophetic authority. In Islam, hidden saints never supersede revelation or become objects of worship. Their role remains service, not cosmic self-deification. And one of Madame Blavatsky's teachers was Jamal Al-Afghani, the Sufi Masonic master, right? And she referred to Jamal Al-Afghani as Serapis Bey from the Hermetic Brotherhood, right? Luxor of Light, where they were trying to seek and gain immortality. So all of this stuff goes back to the East, and why the East is never given any credit is something that concerns me, and why I make these books and presentations on my end. Occult hierarchies versus the Islamic Tawheed. One of the most important distinctions between Islamic mysticism and Western occultism concerns the doctrine of Tawheed, right? Which is like belief in Allah, belief in the one God, or how in Freemasonry they say belief in the Supreme Being. So Islamic metaphysics insist that all power, knowledge, and authority ultimately belongs to Allah alone. Hidden saints possess no independent sovereignty. Their spiritual station derives entirely from obedience and divine permission. Western occult systems sometimes shifted towards spiritual autonomy, magical control, or self-divinization, right? So the concept of the secret chiefs could become detached from humility and transformed into an elitist hierarchy of occult power. Thus, although structural similarities exist, the theological orientation differs radically. Islam subordinates the unseen to God, while occultism often seeks to manipulate or access hidden power directly. The erasure of Islamic intellectual contributions. European intellectual history frequently absorbed scientific, philosophical, and mystical material from Islamic civilizations, while minimizing acknowledgement of its origins. Algebra, right, from the Arabic word, optics, medicine, philosophy, astronomy, right, the stars with Arabic names, even alchemy comes from the Arab culture and tradition and teachings. All demonstrate patterns of transmission followed by cultural erasure or selective memory. The same process may have occurred in esotericism and occultism. Concepts surrounding hidden initiates, sacred cosmology, symbolic hierarchies, and spiritual intermediaries circulated through centuries of intercultural exchange. Over time, these ideas became quote-unquote westernized, or how I would say whitewashed, obscuring their earlier articulation within Islamic metaphysical frameworks. Modern esotericism and the myth of the secret chiefs. Contemporary occult communities continue to invoke the idea of hidden masters directing humanity from behind the scenes. Secret chiefs remain central within ceremonial magic, channeling traditions, and New Age esotericism. Yet many practitioners remain unaware that structurally similar concepts existed in Islamic mysticism centuries earlier. Re-examining the Islamic origins of these ideas does not invalidate all Western esotericism. but it challenges simplistic narratives of exclusively European spiritual innovation. It reveals a more interconnected intellectual history shaped by translation, conquest, pilgrimage, trade, and mystical exchange. A comparative framework for understanding. A careful comparative approach requires nuance rather than sensationalism. Not every similarity proves direct borrowing, and parallel spiritual ideas can emerge independently across civilizations. However, when identical structural motifs appear repeatedly alongside documented historical context, the possibility of transmission deserves serious consideration. The doctrine of hidden saints, cosmic spiritual hierarchies, invisible guidance, initiatic secrecy, and concealed spiritual authority existed in Islamic metaphysics long before their formalization in many Western occult movements. The cumulative evidence suggests that Islamic civilization contributed more to Western esoteric thought than is commonly acknowledged, and I've proven that in my books and lectures, whether it's Freemasonry, the Knights Templars, Thelema, OTO, Rosicrucianism, even geomancy from Golden Dawn coming from Islam. It's all relative, so the East has to be acknowledged. The ethical lessons from the Rijal Al-Ghayb. The Islamic doctrine of hidden saints ultimately emphasizes humility, sincerity, service, and annihilation of ego. The greatest spiritual workers remain unknown, seeking neither fame nor domination. Their hiddenness reflects purity rather than elitism. They operate through mercy, prayer, sacrifice, and remembrance of Allah. This ethical orientation sharply contrasts with modern fascination surrounding secret societies and occult power structures. The true lesson of the Rijal Al-Ghayb is not obsession with hidden authority, but transformation of the self through sincerity and submission. Their mystery points beyond themselves towards divine reality. Conclusion of this presentation: reclaiming forgotten intellectual histories. The history of ideas is rarely confined within civilization borders. Islamic civilization profoundly shaped philosophy, science, mathematics, spirituality, and metaphysics across the medieval world. The possibility that Western occult doctrines concerning secret chiefs and hidden adepts drew inspiration from Islamic mystical frameworks deserves deeper academic investigation. By examining the Rijal Al-Ghayb alongside Western esoteric traditions, we uncover a hidden genealogy of spiritual concepts traveling across cultures and centuries. Whether through direct transmission or gradual adaptation, Islamic metaphysical thought appears to stand much closer to the roots of Western occult hierarchy than commonly admitted, and something that I've proven in my previous works. Recognizing these connections allows for a more honest and interconnected understanding of intellectual history. So it's not to take anything away from our Western brothers and sisters who are on the path, but giving them the full, complete picture so all can be celebrated and acknowledged, right? That is the ultimate point here. Here are the references and academic resources that I recommend for you to further your studies and understanding in these subjects. So please take a moment and pause and take a screenshot of this if you need. And also my book, The Rijal Al-Ghayb, The Hidden Saints of Islam, which I will put the link in the description below. Thank you for watching. If any questions or comments, please email me at salmansheikh911@gmail.com. And of course, all my work is protected under the copyright laws of fair use for the purpose of nonprofit, free speech, education, entertainment, and information purposes. Thank you so much. All rights reserved.